They began in the water. Dark, gliding shapes that violate every law of nature. They're not human, but they hunt human women. Not for killing, for mating. Humanoids from the Deep. Starring Doug McClure and Turkel and Vic Morrow. Humanoids from the Deep. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
In a world where podcasts reign supreme, two friends dare to ask, do you even movie? Hosted by filmmaker Henrique and movie aficionado David D. Noyo. Spoiler alert.
All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of Do You Even Movie? I'm, of course, your host, Henrique Couto, here with my good buddy, Double D, David De Noyo.
Greetings.
The fish lover himself.
Fish lover himself. Wow.
It is true.
All right,
It is true. So before we dive in...
I see what you did there.
Before we dive into the film tonight, it's important to talk about something that, honestly, I worry might be a little too heavy for the show.
Mm-hmm.
David brought back the Fu Manchu.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
He's rocking a Hulk Hogan.
Yes, I am.
And I generally don't have a problem with that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, because, like, you look like, not to speak ill of the dead, but it's like, we have Morgan Spurlock at home.
Oh,
But
timely. Wow.
But the problem I'm having is the combo with your horn rim glasses.
Here we go again.
Because you look like the dad at a school that is like coaching like curling or something, because like you really want to be a part.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay, Dave,
you gotta take the mustache off.
We need someone teaching curling. And you were like, okie doke. You know?
Okie dokie.
But anyway, so this week this month we are taking a break from scattering what we like to cover the works of the late and great Roger Corman, who passed away last month.
Yes.
Roger was, if you don't know, I don't know how to even begin.
Yeah.
But Roger Corman was the ultimate producer. Of not only low-budget films, but of independent films. One of the greatest distributors of independent film of all time. For those who don't know, he not only distributed Drive-In Fare, but he was one of the first people to massively distribute Fellini and Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah.
So, but that all said, we're going to be covering 4 films this month. Either produced or directed by Roger Corman. 2 of them will be produced and two of them will be directed.
Yep.
And this week is Dave's choice.
My choice.
So he chose the one with the most interspecies rape.
Would you stop?
I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong, but at the same time, oh my God. Anyway.
I mean, how am I wrong?
Anyway.
I'm just saying.
This also doubles as my birthday show because this episode is dropping 2-3 days before my birthday.
Oh wow, you want an award?
I don't want an award. I'm just more so saying that your birthday pick is already going to be Monster Squad. We know that.
I'm not 100%. We'll see.
We'll see.
You never know with me.
We'll see.
I'm the wild card.
Humanoids was on my list for a potential birthday pick, but then unfortunately with Roger passing, it just kind of made it even more perfect for a pick for us to kick off the month with, because for me, I feel like this is the most notorious of his movies that like was a Roger Corman staple, because I remember back in 2010 when they released all those through Shout for the first time.
Well, the 80s was kind of I wouldn't say it was the golden era for Corman.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, Corman was so good at adapting to whatever trends were happening. You look at his career in the 60s and 70s, it was all monster movies and teenage runaway movies and the biker films, which he kind of started the entire genre. Yeah. And in the 80s, he dipped his toe in slasher movies. He dipped his toe in the gory monster movies and stuff like that. In my opinion, his greatest time was in the 90s, because he was just cranking
them out.
I mean, 10, 11 movies for cable every year minimum.
Yeah.
And he was making them in Los Angeles. He was making them in Ireland all at the same time. He was still making some in the Philippines. He was always doing something, and he was always trying something new.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason we're all kind of conditioned to love his 80s output is because the 80s is also the most loved nostalgia decade for movie lovers, especially for the kind of people who are going to buy a Shout Factory release or what have you. So it would only make sense that people would dive into stuff like Humanoids, stuff like Galaxy of Terror,
Piranha,
lots of, especially
Forbidden
Piranha.
Plant, or not Forbidden World.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. That's one I need to revisit.
Well, too bad.
But no,
you never will.
I mean, what was your first introduction with Roger? Because mine wasn't Humanoids. Mine was the pictures he did with Vincent Price, the Poe pictures.
Well, see, this is going to, again, make me feel old because I was being exposed to Roger Corman when I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was watching the kickboxer movies. I was watching, which he made dozens of movies about kickboxers, dozens of movies about strip clubs, dozens of these different types of movies.
Yeah.
And I was absorbing them as a kid who had access to a television pretty much all the time.
All the time, yeah.
So I was watching Roger Corman movies my entire youth, and I had no idea. The idea of Roger Corman as a person came about when I was around 13 or 14. That was when I kind of understood, like, there was this guy, his name was, or there is this guy, because he lived to be 98 years old, named Roger Corman. He's the king of the bees. At that time, he had been making sci-fi original movies for about 4 or 5 years at that point. It was like 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
He was really leaning into that space and also leaning into licensing out titles. I mean, he made a little bank off of Grand Theft Auto because the video game ended up having to pay him a license.
Yeah, it did.
Fast and the Furious, he got a payout on that. They ended up remaking Death Race 2000. He got a payout on that as well. So he was definitely always thinking about what to do with his massive catalog.
Yeah.
And then I can't even remember now, maybe 2015, 2016, maybe a little earlier, he sold his entire catalog outright to Shout Factory, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah.
And as he winded down his career, I mean, he didn't start slowing down heavily until he was in his mid-80s.
Mid-80s, yeah.
Which is insane.
Well, because I think a lot of people within the last probably 10 to 15 years, a lot of his stuff hitting Sci-Fi Channel, like Dino Shark and all those movies, because it just seemed like those were getting pumped out a lot. And
he was a brand name that was easy to sell. So they would be like, oh yeah, it's another Dino Shark or whatever.
Yeah.
But then they'd be like, but it's Roger Corman Presents.
Yeah.
And speaking of the phrase Roger Corman Presents, this is a guy who had a series of films for Showtime and ended up producing for Showtime 23, I believe, films.
That sounds about right.
In the Roger Corman Presents. Again, I saw films in the Roger Corman's Presents line. The one I remember the most is Alien Avengers because it's insanely violent with George Wendt and what's her name? She used to be on MTV. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
But like
Parker
those were
Posey?
like do what?
Parker Posey?
No.
Okay.
What?
Well,
Parker Posey?
she was on MTV.
It was like Julie Brown or something.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
So I just couldn't remember for sure. But like he was so just on Showtime, he did about 11 movies a year for 2 years straight. And they were all under the banner of Roger Corman Presents.
Yep.
And some of them were remakes. One of them was actually a remake of the film we're talking about tonight, Humanoids of the Deep.
Yeah, with the same name.
Well, it's a remake. Yeah. Usually they do that.
Well, because Death Artist, the remake of Bucket of Blood.
Well, but they called it Death Artist on VHS. They called it A Bucket of Blood when it aired.
Blood on it aired. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, all of those films had the original titles when they aired, because that's what they were for. And then I would assume, knowing Roger, he had some deal where it was like, and after it's been on your channel for 8 months, I can put it on VHS.
I think that sounds like him.
I mean, well, he was always thinking about that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's always inspired me about Roger Corman is he, like, figuratively and literally outlived all of his competitors.
Yeah.
You know, he had some of his big competitors were like Dino De Laurentiis' company, which went out of business because it grew too fast.
Buried.
Live Entertainment, Republic Pictures, the relaunch of Republic Pictures, Live Entertainment, which became Vidmark, which became Trimark, which became Artisan, which again got too big for its britches eventually.
Yep.
Every single version of it got too big for its britches. Roger looked at the video and movie business so differently because people would, during the heyday of VHS, folks were like, wow, so if we make a film and we sell the rights for VHS, we'll get $150,000 or $250,000, which was not impossible.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will be like, well, then let's do that, and then we'll sell our foreign, and then whatever it makes in theaters, will all be gravy. Roger would be like, okay, so between foreign and VHS, we made $400,000. Let's make the film for $150,000.
Yeah.
So the film has already tripled its money before it's even made. And he did that again and again and again and again and again. He has over 400 films credited to him as a producer of some sort.
Well, I remember when the news broke that Shout Factory had basically acquired his library to what we know of. That was a really, really big deal because that was so much content.
Yeah, well, in an amazing turn of luck, when he sold New World Pictures to a group of attorneys who, in my opinion, did not know ass from elbow.
Probably not.
When he sold it, he kept all of the catalog. They bought the business, they bought the name, and they bought the distribution methods.
Yeah.
But they didn't take any of the old catalog, which is insane to think. And no wonder Roger took the deal.
Yeah,
They offered him some insane amount of money just for the business.
Jeez.
So when he sold New World Pictures, the next day he opened Concord, which also was known as New Horizons.
New Horizon,
He also had a couple other companies like Pacific Trust, Cali Film. He had all these different companies that would produce, distribute, and market low-budget films. And he always had his fingers in all these different pies. But that's one of the reasons he was able to sell his catalog all at once, was he maintained a lot of it.
That makes a lot of sense.
And very seldom, although he did, very seldom did he allow other investors. He would just invest his own money.
Yeah.
Which is completely unheard of too.
Yeah.
Although there are films where he had partners on them. Every now and then he'd let somebody come in and put $100,000 in, and he put $100,000 in, and then they'd split the revenue. But I wish I knew all the inner workings. I wish there was a book, because there are many Corman books, and I've read any of the good ones. For sure.
And of course, Corman's World, the documentary that we've mentioned already. I think last week, we talked about it too.
Yeah, my problem with Corman's World is my problem with the books.
Yeah.
They stop at 1988, or not even. I mean, Corman's World kind of stops at 81.
81, yeah.
But it's a great doc.
Still a great doc,
and his book, How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime, it stops right before the 90s. And that drives me crazy.
Because that's what you really want.
I want to know everything about it. The only documentary, which I would have to look up the name of, because it references when he built the studio in Ireland, which was I keep wanting to say Killarney, but I'm sure that wasn't it. But there's a documentary out there about when he worked in Ireland, and it's the only in-depth interviews I've ever seen him do about the movies he made in the 90s, which is extra funny because he was making basically action movies. Whether they were kickboxing action movies or shoot 'em up action movies, and then he was making erotic thrillers because they were huge.
Yeah.
And Ireland did not love it when they found out, they saw them as porno.
Yeah.
Because they went to a film festival where they showed one of these erotic thrillers, and they were just because it was just so much bumping and grinding. And that was pretty much the end of that. But they had a good 3 or 4 year run.
That's awesome.
To this day, when productions get made in that part of Ireland, they're like, oh, this is all because Roger Corman caused us to build a studio, caused us to learn how to be film workers.
There you go.
Because he would send, American filmmakers or European filmmakers there, and then every movie they did, it would be if somebody said I could be the key grip if that's a pay bump, and he'd be like, go ahead. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And so his idea, basically, when Roger's dream was to eventually have to buy almost no plane tickets.
Yeah.
Just send them Don the Dragon Wilson, or just send them Maria Ford.
There you go.
Or just send them whoever. And some of those movies, those are some of his best from the 90s, were the ones that were made in Ireland. And a lot of them you don't even know it's in Ireland. Spectre, which is a highly underrated Roger Corman film. And Impossible. It might be, maybe you can get a hold of it now. I hope you can.
Yeah.
But that one's a haunting horror house movie about a family who moves into a haunted house and things start getting fucked up and everything. But anyway, I digress. I could talk about Roger Corman for forever.
Yeah.
Because he's one of my first heroes. When I heard how he just aggressively made movies he thought were entertaining, and he had that perfect marriage between business and art, I always wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
My first hero was Roger Corman. My second heroes were guys like Fred Olen Ray and Jim Wynorski. And it's just, I don't know. So it's surreal that he's gone, but it was surreal that he was around.
Yeah.
The other guys that you would say in the same breath with him from his heyday would be Sam Arkoff and people like that. They're all dead.
They're all dead.
Maybe made it to the mid 90s before they passed away. But Roger, he was just, hemming and hawing until like 2010.
Well, he was just on Joe Bob. One of his last appearances was him on Joe Bob with Bruce Dern. And no offense to Bruce, but Roger was sharper than Bruce was.
Roger was always so incredibly, incredibly sharp.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sad. I'm sad that he's gone, but we're going to talk about one of his weirdest theatrical outings. That's the other thing is this film is from, what year was this?
1980.
1980. So it was when they were still doing theatrical distribution like crazy. And this one's Humanoids from the Deep.
Yes.
Dave, you want to give the deets?
I would love to. So Humanoids from the Deep from 1980. This film is 1 hour and 20 minutes, rated R. There's no exact rating for the R, but I'm going to go ahead and say sexual violence, graphic violence, language, and drug use. That sound about right?
Did you mention sexual assault?
Yeah, I said sexual violence.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
No, I like to give Dave crap because his favorite Corman movie is The Most Rapinist.
It is,
in many ways.
The director of this film is Barbra Peeters. There are actually two directors on this film because we're going to talk about this before when I get done with her filmography. So Barbra Peeters starts her career as a writer and director in 1970 with Dark Side of Tomorrow. Then she goes on to Bury Me an Angel in 71. Summer School Teachers, also writer and director on in 75. Star Hops in 78, which she was uncredited on for writing. And then directorial, or her last directorial is Humanoids from the Deep in 1980. That is because this film is notorious for the fact that Barbra Peeters was given the film by Roger, and there are conflicting stories of how this went about exactly.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, and one of them is that Barbra Peeters was given the script when it was called Beneath the Surface, and it had nothing to do, apparently, with the monsters sexually assaulting the women at that point. And that they also had it under Beneath the Surface so that nobody knew that the title was going to be Humanoids from the Deep.
Well, that was a common thing.
Yeah.
I forget what the name of it was, but one of the actors in one of his sci-fi films said that the title was something kind of artsy.
Yeah.
And he was like, before the ink was even dry from the pen, it was retitled Galaxy of Terror.
Yeah, and Humanoids from the Deep was always Humanoids from the Deep. The reason that it was Beneath the Surface was because they didn't think anybody was going to attach themselves to a project.
Well, yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
Well, and so there are a lot of reasons to use working titles, especially on B movies.
Yeah.
The biggest one, though, is... to get a talent attached. And as a man who made a movie called Babysitter Massacre and then got talent to agree to be in a movie called that.
There is true.
It might have been easier if I called it something else. But the other one is if you're making a sequel to a popular franchise.
Yeah.
You want to use another title so that you can kind of move under the radar. They did that with the
Friday 13th series.
Well, every one of those was after 3.
Was a Bowie song,
They were all named after a David Bowie song.
Yeah.
The Slumber Party Massacre films were all shot under different titles. First one was Sleepless Nights. Second one was Don't Let Go. I forget what the third one was shot under. But they all had those names to kind of get talent on board.
Yeah.
And then the title would change to something outrageous.
Yeah.
And it was such a common practice back then. I mean, I produced a film that the directors were not thrilled with the marketing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could think was like, look, I'm just trying to get people to watch the movie you made for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm just trying to help. But some people, they get weird.
So Barbra Peeters gets the assignment for Humanoids from the Deep, and she goes and shoots. So what Corman says is that she was given the film, and she shot the men's deaths beautifully and brutally and all that stuff, but when it came to the rapes, they were off screen. This was a point of the exploitation era and drive-in era, so he knew that you either had to have breasts or blood within the first 9 minutes, or every 9 minutes, or every 2 pages.
It was like every 3 pages or something like that. Yeah,
every 3 pages. So Roger goes back and uses another director. So finishing out Barbra Peeters, so she does Humanoids from the Deep in 1980. Then she found her stay in TV with Powers of Matthew Star in 83, The Renegades, Cagney and Lacey, Matt Houston, Remington Steele, Finder of Lost Loves, Falcon Crest in 1984.
All roads lead to Falcon Crest.
Shadow Chasers in 85, Misses the Science in 86. So once she got done with Humanoids, the experience on that film basically led her to stay away from theatrical from that point on.
I mean, it sounds like it, but also television's very lucrative.
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Yeah. And the other director that stepped in to finish the film or do the reshoots at that point was Jimmy T. Murakmi. He was the director on The Insects, which was an animated film in 64. He did the Tootsie Pop, How Many Licks Does It Take to Get to the Tootsie Roll Center of a Tootsie Pop commercial, Mr. Owl.
Oh, wow.
He directed that in 69.
Mr. Owl, how many violations from a humanoid can it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Oh,
let's find out.
Mad Magazine TV special in 74. Humanoids from the Deep in 1980. Then he goes on to do Battle Beyond the Stars the same year in 80, another Roger Corman film. Heavy Metal in 81.
Really?
Yeah. So he does Heavy Metal in 81, The Snowman in 82, the cute snowman TV special that was always on around Christmas time.
Good.
Then he does When the Wind Blows, another popular animated film in 86, Opera Imaginaire in 93, The Story Keepers 95, The Christmas Story Keepers in 98, Christmas Carol cartoon in 2001, and in 2005 he did the Kate Bush video for King of the Mountain.
Okay, so he went into TV movies mostly. So I mean, not a that different of a fate from Barbra Peeters.
But I mean, hell, to do Humanoids from the Deep. Well, some of Humanoids from the Deep. Battle Beyond the Stars and Heavy Metal. I mean, that in and of itself impresses me.
I was not expecting Heavy Metal.
Yeah. Moving on to our writers, we have William Martin, who did the screenplay for this. He has Humanoids from the Deep in 1980, and then American Experience in 92, and then that is all. We also have Frank Arnold, who is credited with the story, who does the Macomb Affair in 1947, followed by Humanoids from the Deep. And Martin B. Cohen, also given a story credit. He does Rebel Rousers in 1970. Humanoids from the Deep in 1980, also gets credit in 96 for the story as well, for the remake.
Would make sense.
But where he is probably more known is as a producer, which he did Instant Love in 1964, Blood of Dracula's Castle in 1969. Al Adamson.
That's the Al Adamson one. Okay. I've watched so many cuts of that film.
Yeah.
The TV cut, the theatrical cut.
I just love the fact that Dracula has to rent his castle in that movie. That's one of my favorite points of the story.
Hey, the economy is what it is, pal. I mean, what do you expect for the old count?
Nightmare in Wax in 1969, he's a producer on. The Rebel Rousers in 1970, Humanoids from the Deep in 80, and also The House Where Evil Dwells in 1982 he produced on.
Okay, yeah, so he was quite a producer.
Moving to our cinematographer, we have Daniel is it Lecambre?
Lecambre.
There we go.
Lecambre, yeah.
So he does The Wild Racers in 1968 as his first outing as cinematographer, then The House of Missing Girls in 69, Patty in 1970, The Velvet Vampire 71, Sweet Kill 72, The Runaway 72, Terminal Island in 1973.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
That's the one that Vinegar Syndrome put out a couple years ago, I want to say. That's those convicts that get stranded on that island, and it's like during an apocalypse as well, too.
Huh, okay.
It's supposed to be a pretty wild movie.
No, it sounds perfectly reasonable.
The Young Nurses, 1973.
Well, now we're talking.
Macon County Line, 1974. The Working Girls, 74. Six Pack Annie, 75. Lady in Red, 79. Humanoids from the Deep, 1980. Battle Beyond the Stars, 1980. Saturday the 14th, 81. Kiss My Girls, 1982. The Dirt Bike Kid, 1985. And a film called 68 that was shot in 88.
You could pretty much pinpoint exactly when he met Roger Corman.
When he met Roger, yeah. And then just because this man deserves his credit, because we all unfortunately lost him way too young, composer for the film is a guy you might know by the name of James Horner. And James Horner gets his start in 79 with Up From the Depths, then goes on to do The Lady in Red in 79, Humanoids in the Deep in 1980, Battle Beyond the Stars 1980, then he goes on to do The Hand in 81, Wolfen, Deadly Blessing, The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan in 1982,
wow,
48 Hours in 82, Crawl in 83, Heaven Help Us 85, Cocoon, Commando, Aliens, An American Tale, Willow, Red Heat, Vibes, The Land Before Time, Field of Dreams, Glory, Tales from the Crypt, The Rocketeer, Patriot Games, The Page Master, Braveheart, Casper, Apollo 13, Jade, Jumanji, Ransom, Titanic, Mask of Zorro, Perfect Storm, Enemy at the Gates, Raptor in 2001.
I'm betting that's just because they reused his music.
Reused it, yeah. Wind Talkers in 2002, Apocalyptico in 2006, Avatar, the Karate Kid remake, and Magnificent Seven in 2016. He unfortunately died in a plane crash in 2015.
Well, I wish he'd gotten a chance to do something worthwhile other than Humanoids, you know?
Yeah, right, yeah. No, I mean, Horner's score in this is... I'm a huge fan of scores. I'm a huge soundtrack nerd, and this is a score that feels almost too good for this movie, in my opinion.
Harsh.
I'm just saying. I love Horner.
You say that when it's like one of your favorite movies.
I know. No, I don't. The score's good. That's what I'm saying. And the movie's good too, but the score almost feels too good.
Go on. Say what you really think.
Would you like to know what the synopsis says on IMDb?
Oh, God. Okay.
Humanoid sea creatures start killing a fishing town's residents, raping their women, and it's up to the townsfolk and visiting biologists to fight back and fend them off.
That's kind of perfect.
My synopsis.
Oh, boy.
A small fishing village becomes the target of aquatic monsters who kill the men and sexually assault the women. The town tries to find out where they came from and how to stop them.
I'm not saying yours was terrible. I'm just saying, I mean, they kind of nail it, though.
No, they absolutely do. So moving on to our cast, we have Doug McClure, who plays Jim Hill in this. He has 104 credits on his acting resume, getting a start in 1956 with a film called Friendly Persuasion. He does the Maverick TV series in 57, South Pacific in 58, Lawmen, The Twilight Zone, The Lively Set, It Takes a Thief, The Virginian in 71, Death Race in 73, not the same one.
Oh.
No, just a movie called Death
2000.
Race. Yeah. The Land That Time Forgot in 74, Humanoids from the Deep in 1980, The House Where Evil Dwells in 82, Manimal in 83.
Manimal.
Fantasy Island in 82, Cannonball Run 2 in 1984, Magnum P.I. in 85, The Fall Guy in 85, 52 Pickup, a really, really great Roy Scheider noir that I cannot recommend enough, Murder, She Wrote in 87, Zorro recast in 90, Matlock in 92, Maverick the film in 94, and The Kung Fu The Legend Continues in 1995.
I hope he was playing Kane.
I'm sure he was.
Just this old white, like really, really old white guy.
I'm sure he was. Ann Turkel is moving on to our cast list, who plays Dr. Susan Drake in this. She gets her start in 1968 with Paper Lion, then does Matt Helm in 75, Portrait of a Hitman in 79, Death Ray in 2000, or Death, is it Death Ray? Or, yeah, it's Death Ray 2000, 1980. Humanoids in 1980, The Fall Guy in 1982, Fantasy Island 82, Love Boat 83, Matt Houston, New Mike Hammer, Knight Rider, Scarecrow Miss King, Night Court, Murder, She Wrote, Deep Space in 1988.
Oh, Fred Olin Ray, nice.
Silk Stockings in 91, RoboCop the series in 94, The Fear in 1995.
Well, I mean, it's No
Fear 2. I know.
I'll allow it.
Highlander series in 95, A-List in 2006, and Deja Vu with Denzel Washington in 2006 as well. And finishing us up is Vic Morrow, who plays Hank Slattery. He gets a start in 55 with the series Blackboard Jungle. Alfred Hitchcock Presents in 1957, King Creole in 58, Naked City 59, The Rifleman, Posse from Hell, Bonanza, The Untouchables, Combat, Hawaii Five-0, Mannix, Ironsides, Streets of San Francisco in 73, Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry in 74, which would have been probably the start with Corman, right?
Is that one? I didn't know that was a Corman title.
I'm 90% sure that's a Corman one. California Kid in 74, Funeral for an Assassin in 74, Bad News Bears 76, Roots in 77, The Evictors in 79, Littlest Hobo in 79. Then goes on to do Humanoids from the Deep in 1980, Charlie's Angels in 1980, Magnum P.I. in 81, Fantasy Island 82, 1990 Bronx Warriors in 82, and Twilight Zone, the movie, in 83. And unfortunately, we did lose him on that film. If you want to look it up or even go to an episode that we did on This Week in Geek. I can't remember. Were you on that one where we talked about Twilight Zone?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that was just me and Birdman. We did an anthology horror episode where we talked about the tragedy that occurred on Twilight Zone. And basically what had happened is there was a scene in Vic Morrow's story where he was in a war space and he's trying to save these two kids. The helicopter pilot that was commanding the helicopter got too close. There was a malfunction, and unfortunately, the kids and Morrow both lost their lives on that shoot.
Yeah, and it's a very high controversy story.
Yeah.
Was Vic Morrow in The Last Shark? Great White? Was he in
I
that?
think he is. Yeah,
he plays Quint.
Yeah, he is.
He plays. I'm sorry, he doesn't play Quint.
Plays knockoff Quint.
He plays Wish.com Quint.
Wish.com Quint.
Yeah. It's actually one of my favorite roles he's done.
Last Shark is fun.
Last Shark has a lot to like in it.
Has a lot to like in it. So as of this recording, Humanoids from the Deep is available everywhere. From Crackle to Freevee to Tubi. You can find this movie pretty easily, and I cannot recommend it enough, which we'll get into right now.
Fine.
What was your first time watching Humanoids from the Deep?
Oh gosh, I was a little late to the game. I rented it on DVD.
Okay. So 2010 is when they released the Corman series through Shout for the first time.
Didn't it have an original DVD release when Corman was doing DVDs on his own? Because there were a massive amount of those.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did.
I'm pretty certain that I either bought or rented it. Those New Horizons Concord title DVDs, they were like $12 brand new.
Yeah.
You could get a lot of them at Best Buy for 10 or 15 bucks at the most.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it, and I mean, I'm not going to say it blew my mind, but it definitely had that nasty Corman 80s vibe.
It absolutely does.
And it has that serious, like, post-exploitation movie feel.
Yeah.
Because, the kind of the heyday of the exploitation movie was the 70s, even though in reality there are exploitation movies made every single day.
Yeah.
But that, like, sense of, like, grainy film and waning movie stars and stuff, it's very heavily on display. And I think I'd first heard of Humanoids listening to or watching some special feature on a something with Joe Dante, and because I think he was in the edit room on it.
He was offered it first and turned down directing on it.
I think he was still in the editing department at New World at that time too. So I think that was the first time I heard about it. In fact, no, I'm remembering now. I heard about it when I watched Piranha, which I also rented on DVD, and that was what got me curious to see humanoids.
That makes sense.
I mean, it was like a bunch of naked girls, big monsters.
Yeah.
Some heinous shit happens.
Very heinous shit happens.
And then the movie goes completely apeshit in the last 20 minutes. So what's not to like?
Yeah, exactly. I was probably like 15 or 16 the first time I saw it. I had gotten a copy. My uncle had sent me a copy when the 2010 release had come out, and I had heard about it through my friends who owned the bookstore in Troy, because Sue had said it was like one of her favorites from like her drive-in fair days, and had like told me the story of it, and I was like, that sounds insane. So when I finally got to see it, I was like, that's exactly what the description says. And I was pretty blown away by the movie, to be honest, because like it has every trigger warning possible in it, not only with the sexual assault, but you also have the murder of the kid within the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, the child murder, dog murder.
All the dog murder, yeah. I mean, so it's just like you have everything happening that like normally you don't do in movies, like within the first like 10 to 15 minutes of this movie.
It's all right up front.
It's all right up front, like you know exactly what you're getting. And speaking of you know what you're getting, are you ready to get into this?
I guess.
So we open with a shot of the beach, and we get a card that says Humanoids from the Deep, or if you're watching the re-release, it says Monster.
Which I was always curious because it was released under the title Monster overseas.
Yeah.
But why was the print that they were always making the Blu-rays and DVDs off of?
I think that's a new print they found, because that's the new 4K transfer. The Steelbook we watched is the new 4K transfer they did, and I think that's a new print they found because my old copy was Monster as well.
I mean, or they could have found a print with the monster title, or with the humanoids title and cut it in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because usually it said Monster Humanoids from the Deep underneath it too. So, but this just says Humanoids from the Deep. Yeah, so we get that title card, and we get the first shots of Noyo, which is the fishing village that the movie takes place in, and we meet Tommy and Jim as they are talking to Deke, who is a local fisherman with his son, and then we also meet Hank Slattery, who is also a fisherman as well, and they're getting ready to head out for a fishing run because this is a fishing village. This is what they do. This is how they get their money. This is what their job is, and so they're always fishing in this town. Yeah,
well, I mean, there are only like 10 boats out there.
Only like 10 boats, yeah.
It feels like there's got to be at least 2 other jobs. But yes, it's a fisherman village for sure.
And there's definitely some hard times they've fallen on a bit because the topic that they get to in the movie is that there is this cannery that is wanting to open up in the village that's going to give them a bunch of jobs and whatnot, and we'll get more into that as we go. So we see Deke and his son, Jackie, are out in the water, and they're trying to pull in one of the nets, and we see a hand come up that's a deformed aquatic monster hand just tugging on this net. And so Jackie goes to start running the winch, and the winch runs out of gas. So the kid goes to start filling up the winch, but then they realize that the mass is about to give because we see the hand is just tugging on this net and just pulling on the boat. So he tells him not worry about the gas and come get it. Well, the creature tugs on the net, and the boat tips to the side as Jackie falls into the water.
Yep. Bye, little kid.
Bye, little kid, because Jackie breaks surface for all of about 2 seconds before he's suddenly sucked down. And in one of the coolest shots, we see normal water bubbles come up, and then all of a sudden one's a little bloodier, and then it's just a barrage of blood just coming up.
It's a hell of a lot of blood.
A hell of a lot of blood indeed. So Deke is freaking out, and he's trying to, get everybody to help him. They're trying to pull him back because he wants to jump in the water and save his son. Meanwhile, the gas can that Jackie had has now spilled onto the boat, and they're going to shoot a flare up in to notify somebody that there's trouble. But when the boat rocks that one last time, the flare gets shot right into the gasoline, and the boat explodes.
And boy, does it.
Howdy.
It's one of the most impressive explosions I think I've seen in a Corman film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big boom.
Yeah.
And from a lot of different angles. And woof.
And so Jim and Tommy are on their boat, and they see this, so immediately they're looking at the binoculars like, I don't see anybody that jumped in the water, so they know that there's trouble. So they call it in. The next scene we see is that Jim is back at home, and he has one of the officers over, which I think his name is Hank, too. I think there's 2 Hanks. There's Hank Slattery and Hank the sheriff.
I don't remember. That would be a huge screenwriting faux pas for there to be 2 Hanks.
I feel like he said Hank at one point and called him over, but I could be wrong. But anyway, so he's talking to the sheriff, and they're trying to figure out, what happened. And that's when Jim's dog starts to bark, so he lets them out. And that's when we also see that Jim has a wife, Carol, and he also has a little son as well. So they let the dog out, and the dog starts going through the alleys and goes towards the beach, and suddenly comes upon one of the humanoids, and it barks at it. The humanoid screech, grabs the dog and him fight for a little bit. And this is one of those scenes where, prepare yourself if you're an animal lover because this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So, did you find it?
I thought it'd be nice of me to just make sure that this only shows one character named Hank, and it's Hank Slattery.
Okay.
Slattery.
Yeah, because I think it would say sheriff on it or something.
Is that okay? Let me. This is what happens when Dave's in charge.
Hey, listen,
nobody's credited as sheriff.
Well, then I give up.
Good.
Anyway, he's talking to the sheriff, and so we see the dog get attacked. So the next morning, Carol is looking for Baron. That's the dog's name, and she goes into the doghouse. She's calling for the dog, and we get a fake out as she opens the doghouse door, and a cat runs out. But she also notices that there's the slime all over the doghouse as well, which I never got because, the slime looks like it's their footprints for the most part, but then it's all over the doghouse in that one scene, but they didn't even attack the dog there.
Well, it seemed like that means they were at the very least very interested in
the
dog.
property, yeah. So then we see that on the dock, Hank and his buddies have arrived, and as they are walking up to the dock, they find that all their dock dogs have been slaughtered. And it is a pretty gruesome sight because the next we cut back to Jim and Carol as they're on the beach and they come across Baron's remains as well. So now we've had multiple dead dogs in about 10 minutes of the runtime.
Barely 10 minutes.
Barely 10 minutes. So that is when we see that Jim and Carol are following the trail. They come across the remains, and back in town, Slattery and his men are really upset with the dog's death because one thing I forgot to mention is one of the characters is a Native American named Johnny who's not very well liked by Hank on the island.
Yeah, Johnny Eagle.
Yeah,
he's
Johnny
a Native
Eagle.
American.
Yeah, and he definitely is not liked by Hank, even more so when Johnny is pulling up to the dock with his dog still alive and everyone else is gone. So Hank immediately suspects that Johnny is the one that's done it, and he tells the boys they got a problem.
I mean, it's kind of an understatement in this film.
Kind of an understatement.
And this is also of that classic formula that is, you see it a little less now, but there was this classic formula of just here's a small town with small town people. And then something happens, in the early days, it was like a meteor falling or toxic waste dumping or whatever. It's one of the most classic monster movie setups ever. Small town. Yeah. And then these things start happening. I mean, even Jaws is basically that.
100% it is. So later that night, we see a young woman getting ready to go out, but she's uneasy because she feels like somebody is watching her, and we're seeing a POV from outside her house. So she makes her way through the house, scaring herself because the phone rings, and it's her friend Linda. And we see outside that something is approaching the house, and that's when her boyfriend Jerry pops up, playfully scaring her, revealing it was him. And she says, that Linda and Tommy are going to be coming over soon, so they don't have any time to mess around. We find out that we are then going to the Noyo Salmon Festival.
Which is, a hoot and a half.
A hoot and a half.
They got a live band.
They got a live band. Everybody's dancing. Everybody's showing up drunk and drinking beer in the parking lot for the most part, too.
Well,
Fishing
is it that much different in Troy, Ohio?
You know what? I don't want to go there.
Oh, I wasn't even picking on them.
You're fine. No one really does that. We have Dora now, but we've only had Dora for about a couple of years now, and we haven't really had any incidents with the public drinking. What?
So you're saying everybody in Troy can't hold their liquor? They're a bunch of sissies, huh?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm more so saying that you can walk around town with cocktails now, which is nice. What?
Okay. All right.
You should partake in the Dora, but you don't drink.
So what is a Dora?
Dora is designated outdoor refresh something. Dora is
a law that lets you drink in public.
It's not exclusive to Troy. It's a thing that's being passed around. Like Dayton has a Dora.
Oh, well, who's going to stop them from drinking in public anyway in Dayton?
Fair enough. So we are at the Noyo Salmon Festival where everyone is attending, and we find out that, like I said earlier, that a company called Canco is visiting the town, and they have this plans to build a cannery in Noyo that's going to give them a bunch of jobs. They're going to basically increase the size of the fish and the loads of fish is what they're promising. And that's when we meet Dr. Susan Drake, played by Ann Turkel, who is studying the streams the past few years and claims now they can get the fish bigger and in larger masses.
Mass.
I'm sure nothing is going to go wrong here.
Well, look, it's a monster movie, and people are going to fuck with nature.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So Jim is also going to be taking Dr. Drake and the rest of the Canco people out fishing tomorrow, and that's when we also see that Hank is, he's really in for Canco. He really wants this to go through, and he's just kind of buttering up Dr. Drake, asking her, what she's going to do and how great she is for saving the town. The dance, though, is interrupted as Johnny shows up holding his dead dog and accusing Slattery of being the one to kill the dog, and he also says that he has plans to file a suit on the rights of the land and the fishing in the village to stop the cannery from being built, which pisses Hank off.
Well, they're all afraid that the cannery is going to completely deplete the fish.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when Hank tells the boys to take Johnny outside. And that is when we get into probably one of the funniest scenes of the movie as they start beating on Johnny, and then they're just a big brawl just breaks out in the parking lot.
Literally, the entire town ends up in a fist fight. Well, it's just like somebody's like, "What's going on?" And they get a fist too, and they're like, "Rah!"
Yeah,
so
Jerry and Peggy are in the truck making out, and Jerry pops out. He's like, "What's going on?" And he gets punched and thrown back in. Jim, because Jim steps in to basically stop the fight because it's Hank and 3 of his guys on Johnny. They're holding Johnny while Hank is just pummeling him. So Jim gets into it. He starts punching, then starts punching. Well, then finally everybody's just fighting, and the sheriff has to fire his gun up in the air and be like, "All right, party's over. Everybody go home."
Took him long enough, too.
Yeah, and like you said, put that gun away really quick.
Yeah, I have a feeling that in the original script he didn't fire shots, but then when they were watching the edit, they were like, why do they react so well to him just saying, stop it?
Yeah.
So they put in 2 gunshots real quick.
2 gunshots. So fires off the gun, tells everybody to go home. The next morning, we see Slattery is going solo down the river towards Johnny's house, and he eavesdrops on Johnny saying that he is going to take this case and start it legally to delay the cannery from opening, and that he needs all the backing that he can find to go ahead and get the support he needs for this to go forward. Back on the beach, we see Peggy and Jerry are enjoying themselves while Jim and Dr. Drake and the rest of the Canco crew are out fishing in the water. Jerry and Peggy make their way down the beach, and while back on the boat, something gets caught on the line of one of the Canco reps. He starts trying to reel it in, but suddenly the line snaps, and Dr. Drake takes pictures of something swimming past the boat really quick. And they don't know what it is. They don't know what it is, something in the water, and even Jim calls her over, and he's like, did you get any pictures? She's like, well, I won't know until we develop them. So right now, we just basically have a lovely couple on the beach. I'm sure nothing's going to go wrong, right?
Wow, she shot it on film. What a hipster.
So back on the beach, Jerry and Peggy make their way down the beach, and they start going towards the water. They're splashing, messing around. Jerry goes under real quick and tries to scare her, pops up, and then suddenly Jerry is pulled underwater. And Peggy is thinking this is just another prank by him. Meanwhile, the viewers of the film are watching Jerry get made into a bloody pulp underwater.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking gruesome.
Pretty gruesome.
The murders are very gruesome.
The murders are very gruesome. So that's when Peggy is like, stop playing around. She goes over because apparently his body is resurfaced now, and she spins him around, and half this fucker's face is just gone.
And special effects by Rob Bottin. Who would later become legendary for doing the special effects on The Thing. John Carpenter's.
Roger Corman's The Thing. Oh, man.
That would have been sick.
Oh, man.
But John Carpenter's The Thing, he went on to do a ton of other special effects.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, I mean, rightfully so. That's the film that put him on the map.
Yeah.
So
Jerry is just a bloody pulp right now, and he's trying to get to Peggy, who is then pulled away by a monster and pulled across the beach. The creature then throws her down and starts assaulting her, unfortunately. So that is the first one that we get, I think, in the film.
I'm sorry it took so long.
That's not what I'm saying.
You're mad about it. I get it.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
It's okay. You can be in touch with your anger.
Oh, would you stop?
He's a very angry boy.
So in town, Slattery and his men are at a local bar. As he's sitting and drinking with them, Slattery is discussing how to take care of Johnny because the men are like, hey man, like we could fight this legally too as well. And he's like, well, what's going to happen if we lose? Like, what's going to happen if he gets the land back? We're all going to be out of the job. So he's like, we've got to do something. We have to take care of this ourselves.
Yeah. Little outlaw justice.
Yeah, plenty of that to come.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole hell of a lot.
So on the dock, Johnny comes over thanking Jim and Tommy for helping him with the fight the other night, and Johnny tries to talk to Jim about the cannery, but Jim basically states, hey, Johnny, there's nothing to talk about. Like, I'm for the cannery, you're not. Like, we'll just leave it at that. And he walks away. So Tommy is still there with his girlfriend, and Johnny is like, hey, guys, like, I caught some fish. Like, I just need some help eating them. Do you want to come over and, like, we can talk a little bit? So they get in his boat, and they start going towards Johnny's house. Back on the beach, Billy and his girlfriend, Becky, are in a tent as he has a ventriloquist dummy named Chuck.
This fucking scene.
And they're getting ready to get down to the dirty, and of course
he's turning her on
via the dummy
by talking dirty to her with a ventriloquist dummy
named Chuck.
And I think it's worth mentioning that this is the most unrealistic part of the entire film.
Okay.
Ventriloquism does not get you laid.
No, it does not get you laid.
That is a matter of record. That's not my opinion, Dave. That is a matter of public record. Go to the library, skim through the microfiche. You'll see.
Yeah.
You'll see.
So suddenly a humanoid breaks into the tent, killing Billy pretty gruesomely again, as Billy's back is basically just opened up right before her.
Yeah, just rips a giant chunk right out of his back.
Right out of his back. And he starts chasing Becky before assaulting her on the beach. On the river, Johnny, Tommy, and his girlfriend have arrived at Johnny's just as Slattery and his men are arriving, but they don't know what's going on exactly, so they go inside. And that's when we see that Slattery and his men are lighting Molotov cocktails.
Well, after a long, hard day, a couple cocktails, I think, is any American's right.
I don't know what was in them, but the boom that they make in a second, my God.
Yeah, it was a bit more of an explosion than you'd expect from a Molotov.
So we see a creature rise out of the water by Johnny's house as it's revealed, like I said, Slattery and his men are making the Molotovs. They toss one in, and this explosion that we get is like they threw 3 sticks of dynamite in the house.
Yeah, so they throw... For the uninitiated, a Molotov cocktail is a glass bottle with some kind of, usually it's gasoline, but some kind of flammable liquid in it, and then you stuff a rag in it so you could light the rag on fire. You throw it, and when the glass shatters, it spreads fire everywhere. Traditionally, it doesn't just make a house explode
like that,
which makes me wonder if there's some kind of a Native American ritualistic collecting of oily rags and illegal fireworks that I'm not aware of. I don't know a lot about Native American culture, so please, write in if you are a Native American and you feel that that part of your religion or your culture or whatever is keeping the most flammable home possible.
Yeah.
That may be, and that may be just my ignorance.
I think my favorite part of it, though, is like they see the Molotov cocktail coming. So he's like, everybody get down. So they get down, and I swear they get down in the house. And
they don't get down in the house.
Okay, so they're outside the house. That's what I thought.
Outside,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because when I watched it tonight, I was like, wait, did they leave the house?
Yeah, they went outside.
Okay, so they all get out of the house. The house implodes, and that's when we see, like I said, the creatures of service by the water.
It explodes.
It explodes, not implodes. Look. Sorry.
I know, no. Like, we love to do the whole, like, Dave misspoke, and I pointed out.
Yeah.
But no, it fucking explodes.
No, it explodes. There's no imploding.
I can't allow that.
No, it's fine. That's fine. It's fine, doctor.
No problem.
So that's when we hear Tommy is going down by the water to get to put out the fire, and that's when he hears a humanoid squeal, thinking that it's Slattery's men, which I never got because the sound it makes is the humanoid squeal.
Well, I think that you have to imagine being on edge. You just almost got exploded, and you're livid because they almost killed you, your girlfriend, and your friend.
Yeah.
So I think he's just like, when he hears something, he's like, all right, I got to get revenge on this.
So he starts firing a gun off in the distance, not realizing that a humanoid pops out of the water right behind him, dragging him into the water. So getting out of the water, Tommy is then attacked by another creature. So now there's 2 humanoids that are by the dock, and he's saved by Johnny, who shoots one and then axes the other creature as well. Doesn't ask him a question, he just axes him.
No, he just axes him.
Axes him. So Tommy's girlfriend, Linda, takes Johnny's truck to go get help, but that's when she finds a humanoid on top of the car. It starts breaking the glass, so she brakes real quick, throwing the humanoid off the car, driving by it, and then begins to drive again as another one crashes through the back window, grabbing onto her, causing her to drive over a bridge, and the car explodes, killing her and the humanoid.
And it was so good, it's used in at least 4 or 5 Roger Corman films.
Yeah.
This truck rolling off. Anytime you watch a Roger Corman movie, if you see an old beat up, like an old style, like 1950s, 60s style beat up pickup truck, you know it's going to go off a bridge and explode.
That is true.
They even, and this is my favorite, they even have the audacity to reuse that in the Humanoids from the Deep remake.
Yep.
So in the remake, they get in a truck and drive off, and it goes off the edge.
Oh, they included like basically the whole salmon festival isn't like the carnage and stuff is reused in the 96.
Really?
Version. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. So the next morning, Dr. Drake arrives in town wanting to rent a boat, but finds that Slattery and his men are discussing Linda's death. As Johnny arrives with an injured Tommy in his boat, Jim and Carol take Tommy off to the hospital, and Johnny confides in Dr. Drake, saying basically what he saw and the creature, what they look like. Jim wants to assemble a group to go look for the creatures, but nobody wants to join him except for Johnny and Dr. Drake, so they join him, they get back in the boat, and they go to one of the attack spots. So now we are back on the beach where the caves are. Dr. Drake immediately begins to investigate the attack spot, commenting on them being here, and clearly they're more so nocturnal creatures, and they're moving upstream to get more into the line of feeding, is what she says, too.
Yeah, well, because if they're eating fish...
Yeah.
they would eat all of the fish in the entire community in no time. So I think she theorized that they're trying to get to the ocean.
Yeah.
Or that's where they would need to get to survive.
Want to get to, yeah. So they head back to the dock and get on Jim's fishing boat, hoping to find the creatures. They reel in a large salmon, and Dr. Drake thinks that they might be close to what they're looking for if they're catching salmon this size in this spot. So now that these fish have gotten bigger in these areas, they think that, okay, we're getting closer to what we need to find. So Jim tells her that Dr. Drake thinks that they might be close to the spot. Jim tells her he spoke to Carol, who says the doctors think that Tommy is going to be just fine, and Jim suspects that Dr. Drake is not telling him everything.
Well, I mean, why would there be secrets?
Nah, yes.
I mean, I mentioned when we were watching it that, like, there's one of the guys who owns the company that's going to build the cannery.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm old and white. I will get rich by hurting you in some way. I don't know what it'll be yet. That's kind of how it goes.
That's kind of how it goes. So Dr. Drake requests they go and explore the caves along the coastline because that catches their sight. So the three of them venture to the beach near the caves, finding a humanoid resting that rises up and begins to attack them. But it's not just one humanoid. Now there's two again. And, you know, they're generally not from the deep.
No. They're generally from, like, the rivers and stuff, which I can't imagine are more than 10 feet deep.
You know. So another creature emerges and tries to attack them, but it's shot because Jim and Johnny are just laying into these creatures with their rifle. Johnny is drugged to the water and is attacked by another creature. He's shot down by Jim, and then under a pile of seaweed and slime after the creatures are dead, Peggy is found to still be alive. So Peggy, who was attacked on the beach previously, now she is found alive. And that's when another creature rises right from behind Dr. Drake again, and that's when Johnny decides to shoot it right in the heart with a harpoon.
Goddamn right he does. One of the coolest moments.
Super cool.
I like how they don't hesitate to kill the humanoids.
Nope, not at all.
It's kind of like a zombie movie in that way. There's lots of bashing the monsters yourself.
Well, and I think that's one thing we need to specify right now is that these creature costumes are top tier for a Roger Corman 80s movie.
I think that's a little harsh. I think they're top tier. I mean, there's some little cheesiness to them, but they're like full bloody, gory, slimy
monsters
suits with these creepy long arms and stuff. So I don't know if I'd say they're kind of top of the line. And considering Rob Bottin was behind them, it's not surprising.
No, yeah, absolutely. So at the lab, they take the humanoid carcass in for dissection. Looking over the body, they find out that it has they find the gills, stating that even though they can walk on land, they're primarily aquatic creatures with large craniums and webbed hands.
And the large cranium means they could be very smart.
Yes.
Now, they may not be using all of their brains yet, like Dave here. But
no, they need to get that limitless drug because we're only using, 5% of the brain?
I hate people that... If you have ever heard someone say, humans only use 1%, 2%, 5%, 4% of their brain, or 20% of their brain, the rest is limitless potential, they're stupid. They are only using 5% of their brain. That is not true. That's some psychic hogwash. That's stuff that people say to try and explain psychic phenomena.
I think one of my favorite moments with you in the theater that just came to mind when you brought that up is us seeing the Lazarus Project, and Donald Glover's character did that whole 5% of the brain speech.
Oh my God.
And you looked over at me and you were just like, fuck this.
It's just bad science.
So they have large cranium and webbed hands. So one of the Canco reps, Edwards, tells Dr. Drake to keep this hush-hush, and until the reps can review it, her theory might be completely wrong. And this pisses off Dr. Drake. And
there's a giant humanoid laying on the table in front of this cocksucker.
Yeah.
Like, come on, dude. What more does it need to suck you off for you to believe it's real? Jesus.
So Dr. Drake tells him that she's not going to be quiet about it anymore, and she reveals that they have been testing on the waters and the salmon specifically, messing with DNA, creating what they call DNA 5.
Well, if I miss DNA 4, will I be lost when I watch it?
I mean, you might be. I don't know. But the salmon that were given the DNA 5, which allowed them to basically expand into larger sizes and I think reproduce quicker too, if I remember correctly, they were accidentally released into the waters, and that's what they believe have come in regards of the humanoids.
Yeah, they said something like 2,000 infected salmon got loose.
Yeah. 2,000 salmon got loose, and that's what they believe is going on right now. And that's what is the problem of the waters of Noyo, and she believes the humanoids are wanting to mate and grow their species, so Jim questions how many are there at this point and where they might strike next, and then remembers that, hey guys, it's the Salmon Days Festival night.
Yeah, and this is where the movie, to use a professional term, becomes cuckoo bananas.
I would say so, yes.
And it's one of the highest, one of the greatest moments of the film, one of the biggest reasons to watch it again and again.
I mean, if you have been on the fence of us talking about this movie, if you go on YouTube and just look at the carnival scene for Humanoids from the Deep, if that doesn't win you over, then the movie's not for you. Because the carnival scene has everything you could possibly want out of it.
I mean, Jesus.
What?
No, I mean, it's a ridiculous scene.
Carnage
There's
galore.
Nonstop carnage. There's breast exposed in it. It is just obscene.
So we cut to the Salmon Festival where we see a packed event with families enjoying rides. There's music, there's food, there's dancing. And in regards to the music, the guy that's running the festival, he's like, hey, can we play a little something more upbeat? Because the band is just kind of playing slow jams at this point. The Whitewater Boys, that's the band name. I love that. We also see that there's a DJ there from FSH Radio with Miss Salmon, who's inviting people out. And that's
FSH.
Is it FSH?
Fish.
Yeah, fish.
I know, it's just funny.
No,
David.
I thought I missed the letter.
It's KFSH.
KFSH. That's it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It's W on the west on this. It's W out here.
Yeah.
On the East Coast.
WTJN. Yeah.
And it's K on the west side of the country.
Yep, you're right.
So,
I think my radio.
KFSH. Oh yeah, you worked in radio.
Yeah.
You should know this shit. I quit.
So KFSH with Miss Salmon inviting people out. Back at the house, we see Carol is with her son, and we see something from a POV is watching her from outside the house.
So we keep bouncing between this carnival, which gets more and more bizarre and obscene as things go. And then we keep going from there to this suspenseful woman and child being stalked scene. And in a way, I hate it.
Yeah.
But in a way, a bigger way, I fucking love it because it's such a weird choice, and I know why it's there.
Yeah,
because they shot the carnival thing later. They had
the original movie was a lot different apparently from what we got of Humanoids from the Deep now, and there was a lot of reshoots for the violence and the sex.
Yeah, so I think if anything was a reshoot day, it would be like, let's just have them wreck a carnival.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of the moments in that carnival thing, they feel improvised.
I would say so.
Especially everything with the K-fish guy.
Yes. So back at the festival, the humanoids resurface at the docks, and we see Slattery and his boys arrive, stating that they checked the caves and found nothing. Jim then arrives with the body of a humanoid to show everyone and warns them that they don't know how many there are, but they are here. And they are here indeed because suddenly the attack begins as they start bursting up from under the dock.
Yeah, that must have been a cut rate dock.
Yeah.
That must have been built by like the mayor's cousin or something, because they are just punching right through the floor.
Right through them.
And grabbing people, grabbing legs. People are falling in the water and getting attacked by even more humanoids. It is just mass chaos.
Absolute chaos. So Jim tells Dr. Drake to start pumping gas from the hull into the water because they have apparently, like he says, like 50 gallons of gas in the hull that they can pump into the water. So she starts putting the gas into the water. Meanwhile, we're just seeing carnage. We're seeing heads ripped off. We're seeing people get attacked. We're seeing a guy's spine get ripped out.
But again, we're also seeing people killing the humanoids back.
Yes, we are. Yes, we absolutely are. And that is when we cut to one of my favorite shots where we have a carousel that we see a couple is on and a humanoid is on it trying to attack the woman. The cuts away from it, spins back around, and then the man that was on there originally is now just dead in the seat as the carousel just keeps going around.
As it spins him right round, baby,
Spins him right round, baby, indeed. So heads are ripped off from the body, spines are clawed out, there's an attack on the merry-go-round, and Carol hears on the radio as the DJ is then killed because a humanoid starts attacking the radio DJ, and he's trying to protect Miss Salmon. Unfortunately, he does not.
And when we say Miss Salmon, we mean a woman with a sash.
Yes.
She won, like, the county fair for being a beautiful woman.
Yes.
Miss Salmon.
And Miss Salmon actually steps up and starts fighting with the humanoid, but not before it rips her top off, exposing her breasts. So she kills the humanoid while topless.
Utterly shocked.
Shocked.
But that's what I was talking about when I said, like, if a lot of it feels improvised.
Yeah.
The idea that, like, Miss Salmon gets her top ripped off and then she ends up getting a thing and killing one back. I was like, I could totally see everybody on the set being like, let's do this.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So we see that the humanoid creeping around Carol's house is also scaring the baby. Slattery is then asked to help because there's a little kid that runs to him and he's like, can you help my sister? And that's when we also forgot to mention that the humanoids start attacking the dock and they're taking down the entire walkway. So they're taking out columns and whatnot. So people are falling in the water, and one of which is a little girl that's standing right above the water on this dock, and this humanoid's reaching right for her. So Slattery goes over, tries to help the little girl. He ends up crawling down to get her and push her up so the brother can grab her. Humanoid starts attacking her. her, and that's when two humanoids pop out of the water going after him and her. She gets away. Slattery is then right between the two of them as Johnny starts shooting and killing the humanoids, so Johnny saves Slattery from the humanoids.
And a real quick aside, I decided to look into Miss Salmon.
Oh, Linda Shane, yeah.
Are you aware she has an incredible career?
I mean, I have one fact about her, but no.
So apparently, Linda Shane, who plays Miss Salmon, literally a woman who is in a bikini and then gets her top ripped off and all this stuff, she was a screenwriter, went on to be a screenwriter for Roger Corman. She wrote Screwballs.
Oh, wow.
Which is one of the most popular Corman comedies. Screwballs 2, she didn't work on as much. But then, in 1988, she directed Purple People Eater.
Oh, cool.
Then 2 episodes of The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Even cooler.
The Undercover Kid, the feature film.
I remember that.
Little Ghost feature film. Flying Ryan feature film.
Oh, wow.
She directed multiple feature films, had quite a career writing features as well. She wrote Starla and the Jewel Riders, Crystal Heart.
What year is Screwballs?
The first one was in 1983.
1983. So that's 3 years after this.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, you know, you can say what you want about, like, doing, like, a bimbo character.
Yeah.
But holy crap, she went on to really do the work.
That's awesome.
That's super, super cool.
That's very cool.
I just realized, I was like, what is this? And, yeah, I was just curious, so I decided to look into it.
Well, I appreciate that. So that way back at the dock, just mass chaos is going, but then the townspeople start realizing, you know, hey, we can fight these creatures back. So they start ganging up on the creatures and start beating the hell out of them too. Jim and Dr. Drake set fire to the water, and it's ablaze now. Humanoids swarm Slattery, but like I said, they're shot down by Johnny. The townspeople start fighting back. One goes after Dr. Drake, but is shot by Johnny. So Johnny's just picking them off left and right in this scene.
Yeah, he's kicking ass and not even bothering to take names.
Yeah, so Jim finds out that Carol is home alone, so he goes to his boat and goes off to ride and get Carol, who's trying to fight off a humanoid now that has broken in, and she's armed herself with a kitchen knife, and that's when 3 more humanoids descend upon the house, and she starts stabbing the fuck out of one and basically kills it.
Yeah, she kills the shit out of it.
Then kills another one with Drano and stabs the fuck out of it, and then she waits, and luckily Jim arrives home pretty quickly. She is saved, and then that morning, Jim and her are back on the dock. Jim then finds out that Dr. Drake is back at the lab with Peggy, who's coaching her through her pregnancy. And that's when we cut to Peggy, who is being coached through the pregnancy by Dr. Drake, as suddenly a humanoid creature emerges from her stomach. And that, my friends, is 1980s Humanoids from the Deep.
Well, I appreciate your brevity on a barely 80-minute movie. One of my favorite scenes at the end is right before the reveal of the doctors delivering the baby, which is just a total Aliens ripoff. I love when they're walking around the boardwalk and there's just a fire there.
Yeah.
And and there's smoke all over and everybody's just kind of like, because they did all band together and fight off the humanoids, which I like that twist.
No, there's one. It wasn't one great shot where they're like, it's like 7 of them just ganging up on it and beating the shit out of it. Yeah, because
when they surrounded, I was like, you ain't from around here, are you? No, but I like that because one thing that I found really refreshing was there wasn't some, we've got an antigen, but we have to get it into the water before whatever, or we have to get them all in a building and set a bomb. The humanoids kill a bunch of people, but then the people fight back. They kill the humanoids, protecting their town. But then, of course, once we realize that all the women that they've attacked are pregnant.
Yep.
AKA spawning.
A deadly spawning or the spawning.
I mean, I was just using a salmon reference.
Well, I was thinking of, another Roger Corman alum, James Cameron with his movie Piranha 2, The Spawning.
The only film that's not listed when he says the movies he's directed.
That is correct.
Well, and Humanoids is a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It goes by fast.
Yes, my God.
And I've never had a bad time watching it. Unfortunately, I have to watch it a lot because it's like every time Dave has a birthday or some shit, he's like, we're watching Humanoids.
It's only like the second time that I've picked it watching because Joe Bob was not my pick. Luckily, Joe Bob picked it and we got to watch it with Joe Bob.
You've picked it a few times.
We watched it in the backyard once. We watched my new blue. Oh, it is like 3 times now. I have watched this a good amount.
Oh.
So.
Thank you, David.
Would you like to know some facts?
You're going to do those in air quotes?
So
give me some air quote facts.
So Enrique and I have already discussed this off mic. We don't know how true this is, but according to Wikipedia, the budget for this film is said to be $2.5 million with a box office return of $2.1 million.
There are a few reasons that doesn't sound right to me. $2.5 million is a little high for Corman, although he did make a few $2 million, $3 million movies. It sounds a little high, and the fact that its box office was so low in comparison is what really worries me, because this was before VHS took the hell off.
Yeah.
So it would have been a loss leader for Corman, although I guess foreign sales and stuff, who knows? So maybe they did. Maybe it was his biggest monster movie, and that's one of the reasons people look back at it so fondly.
So would you like to know who actually reviewed it fondly? Leonard Maltin.
Oh, of course he did. I like Leonard Maltin.
Reviewed it 3 or 4 stars, saying, fast, occasionally hilarious gutter trash from the Roger Corman stable.
Yeah, no. Maltin got it.
Yeah, no, he absolutely did. So the picture was filmed during October, November, and December in California of 1979. The production was originally filmed under the title Beneath the Darkness in the hopes that it would imply a classier type of story and therefore attract the kind of big-name cast the filmmakers wanted.
Classy. There are only 3 humanoid creatures seen together on screen in the same frame throughout the movie. The production really only had 1 fully functioning humanoid costume and 2 others that could be shot from certain angles because they weren't as convincing. Use of such angles, as well as the editing, would help create the illusion that there were way more humanoids than just 3 for the climactic carnival massacre. A tale as old as time, honestly.
Director Barbra Peeters once said that humanoids were originally supposed to be played by the film's stuntmen. Unfortunately, the stuntmen found the monster suits to be too goofy looking and refused to wear them. Additional actors had to be hired to perform as the monsters. It was supposedly Botine's PAs, basically, so he had gotten his production assistants to go ahead and do it.
I believe that.
When they were setting up to film Cindy Weintraub's shower scene, producers asked her if she would do it nude. It was her first role ever, and she did not feel comfortable taking her clothes off, so she refused. So they reshot footage later of a nude body double silhouetted behind a shower curtain and inserted it into the movie. When producers hired the stand-in, they chose one with much bigger breasts than Weintraub, as she would, so she would really grab the attention. Weintraub. Even behind the curtain. When Weintraub saw at the premiere, she was shocked and embarrassed. She ended up having to explain to everyone she knew that that wasn't her naked in the shower. Decades later, when she filmed a making-of interview on the DVD release, she laughed and admitted she can joke about it now, especially since the body double's much more voluptuous figure.
Well, you know.
Linda Shane, who plays Miss Salmon, of course, first role and first only on-screen nude scene. She said years later she was incredibly nervous pulling off her bikini top in front of so many guys in the crew, but she was glad she didn't play victim like the other actresses. She loved that she got to attack and kill one of the monsters, even though her boobs were bouncing around when she did it. She joked.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, she joked that the guys in the audience were probably so fixated on the bouncing that they had no idea she was fighting a monster.
Wait, was there a monster in this?
One scene of the humanoids attacking a naked female victim on the beach was shot when the temperature was so cold enough was cold enough to turn the actress's lips blue. The makeup team kept having to make her lips pink again.
That modern problems require modern solutions.
Show business trade paper Variety said this movie in 1980 with Humanoids from the Deep, Roger Corman comes full circle back to his very first film as a producer, Monster Up from the Ocean Floor in 1954. Despite costing 100 times as much as the new pick, has similar premise and same raison d'etre that of pocketing
went to college.
That of pocketing off profit from drive-in dates with pictures having more nudity and gore than carried away by any exploitationer in recent memory.
Yeah, no, this movie is balls to the walls.
And lastly, a sequel called Humanoids from the Deep 2, The Next Generation, where the creatures had learned to talk, was planned and set to be released in 1991 by 21st Century Film Corporation, but it never materialized.
So that means that Menachem would have gotten his hands on it.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
I want to know what that script looks like.
I am honestly so shocked they never made a humanoid sequel.
Yeah,
I really am, because they set up one. Also, it's hilarious to call it The Next Generation, like right in the middle of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yep. So what are your final thoughts on Humanoids from the Deep?
Well, I mean, I love the film.
Yeah.
I think that if you are a lover of exploitation cinema, if you are a lover of film history and a lover of Roger Corman, it's 1,000% a buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Every edition that's ever been released on Blu-ray of it is excellent.
Yeah.
Worthy of being added to your collection. But if you're a casual viewer of horror movies and exploitation movies and stuff, it's probably a stream it. This is the first time it's extreme for me.
I gave it a stream it. I said although it's a fun creature feature, it's easy to tell if this movie is for you or isn't for you. It's that classic Joe Bob line. If it's that kind of thing you like, if you like that kind of thing.
That's not a Joe Bob line.
That's what he says.
I say that. No,
Joe Bob has said that too.
I don't think he says if you know what I mean, and I think you do.
He says that. He also says it's that kind of thing you like if you like that kind of thing. He has said that.
I've never heard him say that.
He has said that.
I would remember because I say it all the time.
I know you say it all the time. That's where I thought you got it from him.
No, I got it from Abraham Lincoln.
But the movie is really heavy on gore and sexual content. But if you're into the monster movies and you really love the exploitation movies of the 70s and the 80s niche, this is right up your alley. Humanoids from the Deep, I cannot recommend enough. I said it last week when we had announced it that it was kind of right up the alley of the any 14-year-old boy would love it, in my opinion.
I would say that's a fair point.
Yeah.
A fair assessment.
Fair assessment indeed. So as we like to get out of here with a couple of recommendations as well, I've got two this week once again. Sticking with Corman, let's go with 1978's Piranha. When flesh-eating piranhas are accidentally released into a summer resort's rivers, the guests become their next meal.
I mean, it's basically the same movie.
Basically the same movie, yes. And second one, I stuck with a monster theme and also feels like Corman-esque is Slugs from 1988. Killer slugs on a rampage in a rural community. If you haven't seen Slugs, it's probably going to get talked on the show at some point, but I love that movie so much.
I would say as a good monster palate cleanser, I would go with Tremors.
That's a good one.
Because you combat the pure sleaze and blood with something that's almost family friendly.
Yeah.
Also, Google has no example of Joe Bob Briggs saying the kind of thing you like if you like that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know then.
I'm not trying to be mean.
No.
But fuck you.
I swear I heard him say it, but it is what it is. Do you have another recommendation or is it just Tremors?
Just Tremors.
Right,
Jesus
fair enough,
Christ.
I'm just saying.
You took the most obvious one with Piranha.
Well, I mean, how can I not? Plus, also, that gives people an idea that we're not talking about Piranha on this show, probably for this Corman sweep.
Well, probably not.
Would you like to know what we're talking about next week?
Oh, are we going to give it away?
We'll give away this one.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so next week we are going to be diving into, I believe is it 93?
Earlier.
Is it earlier?
Yeah.
89?
I want to say 90 or 91.
I feel like it's, let's find out.
Oh, man. Do you see how well he prepares?
Shut up. 90 on the nose. 1990s Frankenstein Unbound, directed by Roger Corman.
The final film he directed.
Starring John Hurt and Raul Julia. And Raul Julia, sir. Mm-hmm. If you have not seen this movie, I will go ahead and also tease this, that it may or may not be available on a website that has the initials of YT in its entirety.
Yeah, it's hard to find, but also not hard to find.
Not hard to find, yes.
If you know what I mean.
If you know what
I mean. And
I
I think you do. So, and it's a really fun one. It's highly underrated. And the story of how Corman came about to it is very funny.
Yeah.
Because a major studio just offered him a shit ton of money to make a movie. So he just went and did it.
I mean, it's a movie that if you have not seen it, you really, really owe it to yourself to check it out because the creativity behind it is a lot of fun in that story.
Well, I am just a sucker for Raul Julia.
Absolutely.
So, and he's amazing in this as Dr. Frankenstein.
Yes, he is.
So, well, I mean, that's about it. We don't have any messages in this week.
We do not.
Also, we want to, although it hasn't happened yet in real life,
yes.
But we want to thank everybody who joined us on our live stream on June 1st, Saturday. We had a lot of fun with you guys. And if somehow you're hearing this before then, join us June 1st on doyouevenmovie.com.
There we go.
And you'll see a little link come up to watch us stream live for up to 6 or 7 hours. But Dave, I'm not picking on you.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to pick on you, but when you were like, let's freaking go, let's go hard. I was like, yeah. And you were like, we've done 12 before. I was like, no, we did like 6 or 7 and it damn near killed us.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm down to go hard though.
I mean, I'll say this on air. We can try noon to midnight, or we could at least try to go to midnight from where we start from.
Well, they'll probably already know.
Yeah.
Because it's happened
already.
Happened already,
yes.
Anyway, on that note, if you want to email us, send us an email at doyouevenmoviepod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you're listening to us on a podcast, go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. We really do appreciate it. It makes a big difference, gets new people to join us and talk about film. If you're watching us on YouTube, like us, please. Make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment on YouTube because it does help the dreaded algorithm.
And we will respond to you most of the time.
We try. I try.
Yes.
And Dave doesn't care about any of you.
I've responded to several, thank you.
Literally, the last time I said, hey, a fan wrote in something to you, you were like, they're like ants.
I did not say that.
They're all like ants.
I will go on record, though, that, my God, when you put up a clip talking about Love Roller Coaster and you don't apparently specify that you're not telling
that
the
we're not
truth or
perpetuating a lie, a myth.
Everybody comes at you. My God.
Yeah, well, it's almost like even a 1-minute video, nobody watches the whole thing. So
clearly.
And for everything else, you can go to doyouevenmovie.com. There's a contact form. You can check out our Patreon. We'd love to have you there. And that is about it. It is really late at night.
It really is. I think it's the latest we've recorded that in a while.
Probably.
Yeah.
So everybody, take care, and we will see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
It's a dirty joke.